In a world full of questions, one of the most sincere and often repeated is, if a message from God was already given before, why would another one be sent? If the truth had already been revealed, why would it need to be revealed again? These are not rebellious questions. They come from a heart that seeks understanding. And the answer lies not in doubt, but in the beautiful rhythm of divine wisdom. Throughout history, humanity has been in a constant state of growth. Our understanding, challenges, and ways of living have evolved. Just as a child is taught gently in early stages and then given deeper lessons as they grow, the same applies to the guidance humanity receives. Each message was sent for a time, a people, and a need. None were mistakes, none were failures. Each one served its divine purpose perfectly. And when the world changed, the next step of the journey was offered, not because the last step was wrong, but because the destination had not yet been fully reached. The truth does not expire, but people often forget it, misinterpret it, or divide over it. Through time, the pure message may become surrounded by interpretations, traditions, or personal interests that blur its original light. So the light is sent again, not to compete with the old, but to clarify what was always true. It is not about replacing, but about completing. It is not about tearing down, but about building upon. When the final message arrived, it came not to one nation or tribe, but to all of humanity. It didn't claim superiority by force, but by clarity. It wasn't sent because the past was impure, but because the present needed purity that would last. It was protected, not because others failed, but because the time had come for a message that would remain untouched forever. A message that speaks to the heart of every human, regardless of culture, color, or time. The sending of the Qur'an was not a contradiction of the past, but a continuation of it. It was the fulfillment of a promise that divine love and guidance would never abandon us. In that light, the question is not why it was sent, but how beautiful it is that it came, final, complete, and for all. Every divine message sent throughout history was perfectly suited for the time, place, and people it was revealed to. Humanity has always lived in different cultures, with unique challenges, beliefs, and levels of understanding. What one group needed for guidance in one era might not have been enough for another in a different time. This is why spiritual messages came in stages, like chapters in a book of life. Each chapter was meaningful, complete for its moment, and full of wisdom, but the story wasn't over yet. When we look at earlier revelations, we see that they address specific nations, tribes, or regions. Their teachings were tailored to help people of that time come closer to God, correct their moral compass, and build a just society. These messages didn't contradict one another, rather, they carried the same essence: faith, righteousness, love, and accountability. But human society didn't stay the same. It evolved, politically, socially, and intellectually. With new challenges came new questions, and with new questions came the need for clearer answers. The Quran was sent not as a rejection of the earlier messages, but as the next step in the journey. It was meant for all of humanity, not limited by geography or language. Its guidance transcends borders and time, because it came during an age when the world was beginning to connect more widely, when a message could be preserved, spread, and understood globally. That's why the Quran speaks in the universal language of the heart, calling every soul, regardless of background, toward truth and peace. God's messages are never repeated out of error, but out of mercy. Each one arrives when it's needed most, to refresh hearts, to awaken souls, and to light the path ahead. The Quran came not because the earlier messages were impure, but because humanity was ready for a final, unchanging guidance that could carry all people forward. It's a sign not of divine contradiction, but of divine care for every generation and every heart searching for truth. Every divine message was meant to serve a particular period and fulfill a purpose within that specific era. Just as seasons change and each brings its own beauty and function, revelations also arrived at their appointed times, perfect for the people they were sent to. But with time, societies change, Languages evolve and challenges grow more complex. What once guided a small community needed to be expanded to address the hearts of a global world. This is not because the earlier messages were flawed, but because the time had come for a message that could stand the test of every generation. Spiritual truth remains constant, but the way it's delivered adapts to meet the capacity of those receiving it. Early communities needed guidance that matched their understanding and condition. As people progressed, intellectually, emotionally, and socially, God, in His wisdom, sent a message designed to be the final, complete word. This final revelation wasn't an interruption, but a continuation. It carried forward the same divine principles, but spoke in a way that humanity, now more connected and informed, could grasp universally. The earlier scriptures were light for their time, but humanity's journey wasn't yet complete. With the passage of time, messages can be lost, altered, or misunderstood, not always out of malice, but due to human nature. This gradual loss of clarity created a space where confusion could grow and division could take root. To remove this fog, a lasting guidance was sent, one that would not rely on generations to preserve it, but would be divinely protected from change. The Qur'an came not because earlier truths failed, but because their time had passed. Like an advanced lesson after learning the basics, it came to finalize the message of faith, offering guidance that could no longer be limited by culture or century. It was a mercy for the present and a shield for the future. Its timeless nature isn't about replacing the past, it's about honoring it by delivering what was always intended, a message that would never need to be rewritten, reworded, or re-explained by another. It was the arrival of what had been promised all along, a message that would remain clear and complete until the end of time. The Quran was sent with a unique distinction. It came with a promise of preservation and a mission of universality. Unlike previous scriptures that were entrusted to specific communities for safekeeping, the Quran was given with divine assurance that it would remain untouched word for word from the moment of its revelation until the end of time. This preservation wasn't only about protecting the text, it was about protecting the clarity of the message for all future generations without confusion, contradiction, or the need for reinterpretation by another prophet. Its universality means it wasn't sent to one tribe, one language, or one culture. It wasn't limited by geography or tradition. It came for all people, regardless of color, class, or background. In a time when humanity was becoming more connected, when borders were opening and ideas were traveling faster, the need for a global message had arrived. And that message had to be preserved so its guidance could remain relevant for every soul, in every time. Other messages were deeply respected, but their preservation depended on human effort, and over time, variations, additions, and interpretations led to fragmentation. The Quran broke this pattern by being memorized and recorded from the very beginning by a wide community of believers. Its consistency has remained untouched, a miracle witnessed by history. This preservation ensured that the guidance would not be diluted, redefined, or hidden. It would remain open, accessible, and clear for anyone who sincerely seeks it. A universal message had to be not only relevant to its time, but to all times. That's why the Quran doesn't speak to a specific group, but addresses humanity as a whole. It speaks to the heart and conscience, to the mind and soul. Its call is one of reflection, responsibility, and surrender, not to people or symbols, but directly to the Creator. Its guidance is practical, spiritual, and timeless, meant for personal growth, community justice, and inner peace. The Quran was not sent because something failed before it, but because the time had come for a message that would never expire. It was the answer to humanity's growing need for a foundation that would remain firm no matter how much the world changed. A message preserved by God for every heart that still searches for light. The arrival of the Quran was not a rejection of previous messages, but a reaffirmation of the same eternal values that have always guided sincere hearts. It didn't come to oppose, but to confirm what was true and correct what had been confused over time. The core teachings of all divine messages have always been rooted in love, justice, mercy, and the oneness of God. These truths do not change. They are timeless, but when human hands and minds begin to interpret and reshape those truths, the original clarity can become lost in complexity, division, or even contradiction. The Qur'an came as a clear voice among many echoes. It echoed the same call to worship the Creator alone, to live with integrity, and to show compassion. But it also brought clarity to areas where confusion had taken root. Over time, ideas may have drifted, and practices may have shifted away from the original path. The Quran did not come to dishonor earlier guidance, but to purify the message from layers of human interference that time had added. This is why it often speaks not in opposition, but in correction. It reminds us that the essence of faith was never about ritual alone, or lineage, or exclusivity. It was always about the heart's connection to God, about humility before the Creator, and about living a life of meaning, purpose, and responsibility. The Quran invites people back to that core, away from disputes and toward unity and truth. This act of reinforcement is a mercy, not a criticism. When people stray from a path, a gentle voice reminding them of the way back is not an insult, it's a blessing. The Quran is that voice. It doesn't cancel the past, it clarifies it. It brings all the scattered pieces together into one complete message, one that can guide not just a nation, but an entire world. In doing so, the Quran doesn't just restate the message, it protects it. It safeguards the truth from future misinterpretation by anchoring it in preserved words that remain unchanged to this day. It allows people to reconnect with the original light of divine wisdom, pure, undivided, and undistorted. It is a call not to abandon the past, but to understand it more clearly and live it more sincerely. The Quran serves as a bridge between all divine messages, not as a divider. Its role is to unify the understanding of God's will by removing confusion that arose from centuries of debate, alterations, and differing interpretations. Many people wonder why there are so many divisions in faith if all came from the same source. The answer lies not in the message, but in how people handled the message. Over time, communities developed rituals, ideas, and even beliefs that were influenced by their environment, culture, or leadership, not always by the original message itself. This led to separation, even when the foundation was meant to unite. The Quran came to bring people back to that common foundation, the worship of one God, the value of good deeds, and the importance of a sincere heart. It doesn't insult previous traditions. It honors the parts that reflect the truth and gently corrects the parts where truth was lost or misunderstood. This isn't criticism, it's divine mercy. It's like receiving a clean glass of water after generations have been drinking from a muddy stream. The source was always pure, but the path it traveled changed its appearance. By restoring the core message in its clearest form, the Quran gives people the opportunity to reconnect with God without confusion. It removes the need for intermediaries, complicated rituals, or inherited divisions. It speaks directly to the soul, reminding us that true guidance was never about names, titles, or labels. It was about truth, submission, and sincerity. The message was always one, even if history made it seem divided. The Quran reminds humanity that differences in prophets or scriptures were never meant to become walls between us. They were chapters of the same story, meant to lead to one final guidance that brings everything together. In this way, the Quran doesn't just unify the message of faith, it heals the wounds created by misunderstanding. It calls people not to abandon their love for the truth, but to recognize it in its complete and undistorted form. This is why the Quran is not just a new revelation, it's a confirmation and conclusion of what came before. It invites every person, no matter their background, to reconnect with the pure message of God as it was always meant to be. One God, one truth, one path for all of humanity. The Quran was sent not only as a book of laws or rituals, but as a living guide for the heart, mind, and soul. It answers the deep questions every human carries. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? These questions existed long before any scripture was sent, and they will remain until the end of time. While earlier messages touched these questions, the Quran came as the final, clear response, a complete roadmap that doesn't just give information, but awakens inner transformation. Its verses speak to the personal and collective journey of humanity. It addresses the brokenhearted, the seeker, the one drowning in doubt, the one who feels lost, and the one who longs to understand their Creator. It doesn't require a background in theology or a specific heritage. It only asks for sincerity. That sincerity unlocks its beauty and power, making even a single verse feel like it was meant just for the reader. The Quran came to remove barriers not only between people and truth, but between people and their own souls. It teaches that peace doesn't come from the outside world, but from within, through connection with the Creator. It reorients the heart away from the noise of the world and toward divine purpose. While other messages may have been changed, forgotten, or hidden in mystery, the Quran remains open, accessible, and consistent. In a world filled with confusion, it is a clear light for anyone willing to walk toward it. What makes the Quran unique is that it speaks to every kind of person. The intellectual finds depth, the emotional finds healing, the lost find direction, and those who thought they knew everything discover they've only just begun. It holds timeless wisdom, not bound to an age or culture. It doesn't rely on tradition to validate it. It proves itself through clarity, impact, and relevance. In every generation, people continue to enter its light, not because they were forced, but because they found what their soul had always been searching for. That's why the Quran was sent, to be a final, complete, and universal guide for those seeking God, seeking peace, and seeking the truth that no time can erase. The Quran stands not just as a book, but as a living miracle, unchanged, unmatched, and unfading. Its words continue to reach hearts across languages, lands, and lifetimes. It was sent because the message of truth needed to be restored in its purest form, protected from alteration, and offered to all of humanity. It did not come to erase the past, but to complete it. It did not come to divide, but to clarify. And it did not come to replace truth, but to revive it, truth that may have been buried under centuries of human interpretation and cultural layers. It reminds us that guidance from God is not owned by any one group, place, or time. It's a gift to every soul that desires light. The Quran reconnects us to the eternal call that began from the first messenger and echoes through every heart that longs for purpose. It simplifies what the world made complicated. It strengthens what was weakened. It invites, not forces. And it confirms that the door to God is still open, wide and welcoming for anyone who chooses to walk through it with sincerity. This is why the Quran was sent, not to replace truth, but to protect it, not to dishonor previous guidance, but to fulfill it, not because the past failed, but because the time had come for a final, unshakable message. For every heart, every era, and every seeker who still asks, where is the truth? The Quran answers clearly, completely, and forever.